Okay. And then, Blake, are
All right, if everybody's ready then, we'll go ahead and call to order the September 10th, 2020 Watertown Board of Adjustment meeting. We'll need a roll call.
Dolly,
Here.
Spire,
Here.
Kays,
Here.
Ford,
Here.
and then here in the council chambers, we have Hanson,
Here.
Brink,
Here.
Oletsky.
Present.
And Colhane and Dargis Johnson are absent. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Brandy. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 20th, 2020 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Ford second.
Oh.
Any discussion or changes on those meetings? If none, we'll go ahead and take a vote on that.
And then, so we will have to do roll call every time here. So, Dolly.
Yep. Yes.
Spire,
Yeah.
Kays,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Oletsky.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Brandy. The minutes have passed. Moving on to the regular agenda. Item 4A is a consideration for a variance request.
Yes, so this is board consideration of a variance request to the zoning ordinance requirements related to the proposed improvements on the property located at 572 South Lake Drive. So what we're asking for here is to build a new residence with the current setback of the house that is there, of that foundation, which is 18 feet from the property line. And so he's just asking for to keep that 18-foot setback instead of the 25. And I think I'll just open it up, and then if there's any questions we can get into as far as, and I'll zoom in here, that'll help.
Did you have something to share over Teams too, Brandy?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot about you guys. Okay. Where am I going? Okay. So here's where the current residence sits. And then you can see there's 18 feet, but then also South Lake Drive doesn't have sidewalk or anything, so people can utilize that right-of-way, or they do utilize the right-of-way area for parking. So he still has 30 feet, which is definitely sufficient for a car to park there, or any vehicle, really. And then kind of the reasoning too, and the applicant is here if there are questions, but he will be increasing the foundation or increasing the size of the footprint somewhat to the north, but he did want to be sensitive to his neighbors and not encroaching further on their view shed of where the current house is. So if he would be scooting it back further, it would just keep moving it further and further into potentially their views.
All right, thank you, Brandy. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this one if anybody's here to speak on behalf or against.
Brandy, the 18 feet that we're looking at is still kind of in line with other structures along the South Lake.
Right. Yeah, it's actually, considering there's some that are a lot closer.
Correct.
But this is going to be where the existing house is on the street side
Yep.
but planning to go deeper onto the lakeside.
Yep, just 10 feet, I believe.
Is that about the same depth as, if you could switch back, is that about the
Yep.
same depth as where the patio is? That 10 feet, or will it be farther back than that?
This is about 20 feet.
From the existing house to the patio?
Yep,
That's what I'm saying.
yep. So that to the edge of that patio then is
Yeah.
about 18 feet.
Okay, and how many more feet? 10?
And what he's showing on his site plan, there's not a dimension, but it looks like it, you know, I don't think it was to scale either, but do you know? Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's like, help me out, Don.
Brandy, can you confirm the side yard setback requirement?
The side yard is 9 feet.
And it looked like on the site plan, the existing structure sits 8 feet, but the new proposal is going to sit 9 feet and meet the side yard setback.
Yep,
So they'll actually be eliminating one nonconformance and not further extending the existing nonconformance on the rear yard.
right.
Okay.
And then, so the applicant is here to address that, how far the building will be going, back towards the lake.
Thank you, first of all, for hearing me out. What I'm trying to do here is I'm Don Roby, I'm the landowner at 572 South Lake Drive. You think I would know that one? What we're trying to do is we're going to build a bigger house on the lot. We're moving the house that's currently there to another lot. However, I do have a picture of the house. I'll hold it up so you all can see it here. I am very fortunate I have good rapport with my neighbors. If you look at that, again, not to scale sketch, you'll see there are a couple of privacy fences there. Okay, that's all right. Okay. Okay. I just want to I'll point the fences out. If you look at where I'm tapping on the paper, there's a privacy fence on the east side, and there's also a privacy fence on the west side. Those are my fences. Those were put in after concurrence with the neighbors. I didn't want to block any views. And it's again, I'm fortunate I have good rapport with my neighbors. If I move the house closer to the lake, it's going to start encroaching in their viewpoints, more so the guy in the east than the guy in the west. The house we're going to put up is going to be, I've got about 1,630 square feet of living space plus the garage on the current structure. What we're looking at doing, this is not the exact house, and these are not to scale, but the style of house, we're trying to get it to fit the lot. If you look at what's been going on at the lake, is they're building on every square inch that's possible, and they're running the walls up really high. So what it's in doing is it's just basically encroaching on the airspace, and it's blocking sunlight, what have you. The way this house is designed, it's going to give plenty of airspace to both neighbors, and as long as I don't have to move it real close to the shoreline, then I won't block any of the sun that's coming across, although it's coming this way in the sun in the summer, but it won't block views looking left or right. This lot has riprap and stone on the shoreline. I bet at least 20 feet of my lot is beyond the grass. The previous owner did a real nice job with it, but he ate up a lot of the property there. So my point is this. I don't want to take up any more grass than I have to, but I also don't want to encroach on the neighbor's viewpoint or views. And I've talked with both neighbors, and they're all on board with the design. Okay. And I've told them the type of house we're going to build. So if you look at this type of design, that's what it'll look like versus what you see a lot of them where they're just going walls straight up 2 stories. And I think it encroaches on the view and the airspace there. So we're trying to fit the house to the lot.
How far are you going to be from the location of the new home to the shoreline? Are you going to fit into the setbacks for that?
Yes, I have enough room by virtue of the rocks and the water, the land that's in the lake. I'll have enough there, but then
The
again,
high water mark, right? Don't you have to be from that point? 30 feet?
I, sh-
Okay.
I should have enough room to do that. But that's one other reason I don't want to go too far. I'm going to add, roughly, I don't know, 20 or 30% to the square footage on the ground floor. Where I'm going to pick up space is the half story up top. I pick up 2 small bedrooms up there. So I don't want to move it any closer to the lake than I have to for my own benefit, but for the benefit of the neighbors too.
Brandy, can we look at the lake view of it to see how the neighbors all set?
You can see here, it's pretty with, if I take even just some measurements here, like this neighbor is about 12 feet.
Yeah.
This, and then this neighbor here, well, is that a garage right there? So then to this structure, it's 20 feet. So, it's kind of all over the board. This structure is 9. And then you get some that are set back further. This is a new construction here, and they are 7. What they did then is that their garage opens,
Yeah.
parallel to the street. So yeah, I mean,
What I'm
that's
wondering about is on the lake side of the home, with the obstruction and all that good stuff, looking at the house, at Don's house, to the right side, is that a little cabin? Somebody else's, or is that yours?
That's another house or cabin.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do have space to move the house towards the lake. Just don't
Just
want
wanted
to
to
take
make
up
sure
too
you
much.
were
yeah.
in but looking at the neighbors and stuff, you should be okay. Are you going to extend the fence too, so you're still going to be between the houses?
No,
Okay.
I know that you can run the fence to the shoreline, and I've voiced my opinion on that before. I don't agree with that. Again, I'm fortunate that I have good neighbors, and we all talk, and we're trying to, kind of stay on the same page.
and I don't know if Don's neighbors are here or not, but they did call. One of them for sure called and said that he did not have an issue with what he's requesting. Be good if I remembered his name.
Brandy, from a standpoint of minimum space needed to park a car in front of a structure like that, 18 and a half feet is kind of the typical minimum amount, right?
Well, and that would fit a Suburban, 18 and a half feet. So, a lot of cars, that's on the larger end,
Yep. I know that's a figure that, we've frequently talked to in relation to not just the lake, but all around town in regards to parking requirements.
And
The
that's
issue
like a,
with the right-of-way and the lack of boulevard and the closeness that predates a lot of the rules at the lake is something to consider in relation to this. This one does have, though, 18 feet to the property line, and then it looks like an additional amount is a total of 32 feet to the roadway.
correct.
That's what I measured.
And the thing to keep in mind too is that he's not encroaching further than what it is today because this house exists there today. And so that's something to keep in mind, that it's not a further encroachment. And then he is also going to be making his side yard setback compliant.
Any additional questions for Mr. Roby? Thank you, Mr. Roby.
Thank you.
Public hearing is open if there's anybody else to speak on behalf or against while the public is open.
The neighbor that I mentioned was Dennis Murphy.
Was he there in the room, Brandy?
No.
Okay. If there's no other public comment, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's done.
Chairman Dolly, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion on the table by Mr. Hanson. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Case?
Brandy, what is the right-of-way width for South Lake Drive there?
Right in this location, it is 85 feet. And then, but all around South Lake Drive, it goes from anywhere like to 50 all the way to 85 to even 100. In this area, we did vacate some portion of the right of way previously because it was 100 feet.
Could
So-
you tell me what the distance is from the edge of the road to the south side of the walking trail, what that distance is?
7 feet.
No, I mean from the south side from the north side of South Lake Drive
Okay.
of the itself to the south side of the walking trail within that right of way. How much space is that?
43
Great.
feet.
Okay, so just my comment is that I will be supporting this request for the same reasons that I supported the request that the Krauses made in August. I think the right-of-way is excessive for the amount of traffic and what we're going to be needing down the road. The purpose, the parking of vehicles would still be off of the road surface with several feet to spare, and I'm just being consistent with previous decisions I've made before in this regard at the lake.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And I believe to that point, Mr. Kays, we do have a discussion item slated for the agenda on the Plan Commission discussing the rear yard setbacks adjacent to Lake Compesca and Lake Pelican. Certainly additional conversation to be had on that topic. So we do have a motion and a second on the table. Any additional discussion from the board? Hearing none, let's go ahead and take a roll call vote. Brandy, please.
Okay, we'll switch this up. Valetsky,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Spire,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Kays,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Motion passes and we'll move forward. Thank you, Brandy.
Okay. Oh,
We'll
sorry.
move on to item 4B on the agenda then. It looks like we now have another variance request.
Yes. So this is board consideration of a variance request to the zoning ordinance requirement related to the proposed improvements on the property located at 1622 12th Avenue Southeast. And let me pull this up. I'm sorry that I don't have these ready to go. Got short on time. Okay. But as far as looking at the site plan, what is being requested is to construct an addition onto an existing shop building that is conforming to the required setbacks for the C3 Highway Commercial District. The proposed addition will encroach in the required 20-foot side yard setback. The applicant is asking for a variance to allow for the side yard setback for the proposed addition to be 14.3 feet. The owner would like to construct a 30 by 60 foot addition to an existing shop in order to store a camper and other equipment in the building. And so looking at this too, that's the reason, that's the ask, because otherwise he could make an addition that would be conforming with the 20 feet, but to be able to store his camper and whatnot, he is asking for the 14.3 foot variance. And with that, I think, Blake, if you want to open and
Okay, thank you, Brandy. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If anybody here to speak on behalf or against, go ahead and approach the microphone. And anybody on Teams is welcome to speak in the public as well.
And the applicant is here. And introduce yourself.
I'm Wade Brendan. Thank you for hearing me. Just looking to put an addition on store camper and equipment. Just like to keep everything clean and organized, and did a picture, kind of a rendering of what it would look like, and this was the size that would look the nicest and meet our needs to put what we need to put inside. So, that's all I have, I guess.
Sounds good. And they might have questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Brendan.
Mr. Chair, may I ask Mr. Brennan a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Case.
Mr. Brennan, did you talk to your neighbor to the east, and if they had any objections to the encroachment on their property?
I did talk to him, and no, I didn't hear any objections. Get along with him very well also.
And I did not hear anything from the letters that I sent out.
Brandy, according to my recollection and from what I've seen, reviewing the properties in the area, it doesn't appear that we've granted a side yard variance to any of the other shops in that vicinity. Is that a correct statement?
Oof, actually, that's a good question. You know, like just taking measurements from GIS, it looks like this might have had a variance where, that's about 14 feet, it looks like, with that overhang. Otherwise, that might be the only one in this area.
Brandy, would there be any requirement on plating that the city would have on for the applicant? I mean, looking at the lot description, I mean, it's kind of it's not a platted lot like most of them are.
Yes, he would, before he would get a building permit, replat that, just reset the pins.
Mr. Case, again, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Brand, are there any requirements precluding parking in between buildings and structures in the I-1, or can I park maybe the property to the west if I wanted to go put a 14-foot camper or 12-foot wide camper and put it right up to the property line? Can I do that, storing it outside?
Yes,
And so the neighbor could do it also, so that you'd have building, camper, building
right.
right on top of it.
Brandy, do we have a 5-foot requirement for a buffer from parking of vehicles from property lines in this district?
For a parking lot, but just for storage, outside storage, I can verify.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, Mr. Case, I believe you said I-1 district. This is a C3 highway commercial district here.
Excuse me. Sorry, thank you.
So for outdoor storage of off-street parking, maybe in the side yard next to a garage, provided any item stored does not protrude beyond the front of the adjacent structure. If the side yard is adjacent to an alley, then at any item stored or parked must be set back not less than 4 feet from the alley. If the property does not have a garage, the owner or occupant may choose a side yard for permitted outdoor storage off-street parking. And then so that reference that Stacy had made, that is for an actual parking lot. Yep.
Thanks, Brandy.
Brandy, one other question. What is the rear setback requirement in this district? Rear yard?
30 feet.
It's 30 feet in the rear and 20 on the sides.
Yes. Yep.
Any additional questions from the board? Comments from the public while we have the public hearing open? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'll look for the board to make a motion for additional discussion on this item.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve. Just get conversation going.
Motion by Oletsky. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Additional discussion from the board.
This is a really tough one because I cannot remember ever allowing something to sit that close to a lot in this area. That's a tough one. Not to say that it's not there, because obviously it is there.
And sorry, the reason I thought about that more, it is, oh, never mind. No, I'm going to keep that going. It doesn't matter. I was going to say because it's double frontage, but it's still a side yard.
Wade, maybe you, oh, I can't ask Wade a question. I was just wondering, like the person that has all them cars and stuff there, is that lot large enough to build on too?
Yes.
With all the setbacks, the 2 setbacks?
Yep. And then actually, so it's one parcel, it's 2 separate lots. So this would have its own building right as well. Yep.
I don't think that one's platted either, though. I think this whole area kind of missed out on being platted, so there's a lot of weird legal descriptions in this area.
I will check, but I think it is.
So that's 2 legal descriptions, 1 owner to the south and to the east?
Okay, yeah, so they all, that is real, okay, that's weird.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question if this would have to be platted, because this is all just platted as one block, and it's been sold off and built as all of the legal descriptions are like this one, the east 125 feet, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
So if we could get platting done, I would think that would be good for this area.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely something that it should have been done at building permit issuance, but that is also something that we've been regulating more heavily now, in the recent past. So. The thing about commercial lots too, though, is that you can have multiple structures on there, so it's not like it's not like a residence or a residential lot that then each lot only has one building right for a primary structure, where these you can. So it's not wrong, but it is just cleaner.
Brandy, this is, Mr. Chair, Brandy, this is Todd. The types of uses in this C3 zone, are they mostly service-oriented type businesses?
I believe that a lot of these are contractor shops.
Contractor shops, repairmen, auto repair, that kind of stuff?
Yep.
And the intended use for this addition is for personal storage? Not related to the business?
It would be business storage also. Yes, it's for equipment.
Did you hear that?
Yes, thank you.
Any additional discussion from board members before we take a vote on this item? If not, we'll go ahead and proceed with the motion on the table to approve. Brandy, if we'll do a roll call.
Yes, I want one point of clarification too. According to his letter, so the camper, but he also did put in here, so it is for equipment and trailers for the business, which he said. Sorry again. All right, we'll do the roll call. Brink.
Yes. Yes, excuse me.
Spire.
Yes.
Dolly,
No.
Kays,
No.
Hanson,
Yes.
Oletzky,
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Five yeses and 2 noes, motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, that variance is approved. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4C on the agenda, which is a conditional use request.
Thank you, Blake. So this is a board consideration of a conditional use request in the I-1 Light Industrial District on the property located at 2431 14th Avenue Southeast. And the ask here, the applicant, Jeff Rowe, seeks approval of a caretaker's residence to be located in the I-1 Light Industrial District. The owner is seeking the conditional use to construct a caretaker's residence in an existing shop. Pharmaceuticals are delivered to the shop regularly, and a caretaker would assist with providing security for the contents of the building. And this is also in an area where we just recently granted this same request. He will work with Chip on making sure that it is properly secure for fire protection. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Brandy. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this one.
Brandy, this is zoned I-1, correct?
Yes.
Isn't caretaker residence just a permitted use in the I-1?
It was until just recently we amended it. And then, so that's why, and the reason why we amended it was so that we would have, at least, we would be able to review this. Otherwise, yeah, people could just live there without even having to come to the board. This is more so just to make sure that life safety is being protected and that we know that somebody is living there. If, you know, for most situations where if a fire were to happen, that the fire department would be aware of it. So they were looking for somebody, because they probably wouldn't expect to find somebody in a shop like that. So then they would weigh out their
But this is the same
Their
thing
risk.
that we did for Brian and Sheila Nygaard, correct?
Right, yeah, right next door.
Okay.
So this was the lot that was granted previously. And then this is the property that we're looking at today.
Is the homeowner? Is he here?
Brandy, this
Is the
this
guy
is
here?
Diane.
The owner? Okay.
Brandy, can you put up the plan of the inside of the building?
Yes.
Is he looking at one caretaker's residence in there or two?
Primarily just one right now. The one on the south end, it's 2 levels. The bottom main floor is office. Upstairs we got kind of a break room for my drivers. But then on the other side I have basically the same dimensions, same setup on the other side. It's just kind of wasted space, and I've got an assistant manager kind of looking for a place to live. And this would help me having someone overnight when pharmaceuticals are present. And
Are there going to be children living there?
no.
So you're talking about one caretaker's residence, not two.
Correct.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Case?
just a question for the applicant, and this would only be for those employees of your business. It wouldn't be rented out to a Lake Area Tech student, for example.
Correct.
Thank you.
So if this employee, after about 20 years, decides to retire, and if someone else is going to move in, it's going to be an employee only
Correct.
with like a spouse, but no children.
Right.
Okay.
At least I can make sure of that, yeah.
Yeah.
And right now, the gentleman looking to rent it is single, 30-year-old.
I just think, children in a zoned industrial area, all of a sudden you got a playground and everything, and that's really important for kids to have, but
Right.
it's not the right place for kids.
Right.
Maybe to visit, but not to live.
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult to enforce whether or not the wife or the spouse or the kids are going to be there. I would think that the more people that he has living in there, it doesn't help his liability issues. So again, I think if we get to the motion point, my motion, if we have a motion, would be to restrict it to employees only.
And it is already that in the definition. So it would be on like a complaint basis where then we could check into it. And then if it turns out where it wasn't an employee or whatnot, then we already do have that in the definition.
Brandy?
Yep. Did someone say thank you or did they say Brandy as a question?
But you're going, there we go. The apartment for the caretaker will meet all requirements that Chip Primus recommends and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll have to get a permit to do that. You'll have to do an interior remodel somewhat, right?
Yeah. I kind of got it made right now, so it could be an office or a resident.
Yeah. So, and then he has been in contact with Chip.
Not yet, no.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we would want the applicant to seek a building permit with the fire department review.
Okay.
Is there anybody else in the public to speak on behalf or against while we have the public hearing open?
Is your building fully sprinkled currently?
No.
So that'll be something that might, so if the property itself is fine for a caretaker's residence, that will be something that will be required, the whole building will have to be sprinkled,
Okay.
sprinklered. But that's where you'll work with Chip on that.
Okay.
And we'll be in contact with him tomorrow, right away.
Any additional questions from the board for Mr. Rowe? Or comments from Mr. Rowe?
I have one. Typically, when we do conditional uses in areas where there isn't sidewalks or other infrastructure, we either require them or we request the applicant to sign a waiver of the right to protest. If sidewalks ever to go in, they'll pay their portion. Do you have any issues with that?
No. No, I got no problem with that.
And in industrial districts, that's where the sidewalk can be waived. Like, it's not required, but it is an okay thing to have just in case that someday that sidewalks are wanted.
All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And look to the board for any motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make an attempt. I would make a motion to approve the request for a single unit caretaker's residence to be a part of this structure. Do we need to put in there with the waiver of right to protest sidewalks?
Yeah.
And that the following all building codes and inspection by the fire department, which may require sprinklers.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on that? I guess just a comment from my perspective on the sidewalk issue. While it is something that has traditionally been optional in an industrial area and something that we haven't firmly approached, as we talk about mixed use districts and caretakers and residential use that's ancillary to some of these developments, not just this one here, that's something that we should probably consider at a holistic level of whether or not sidewalks and walkability becomes a more stringent factor. In this case, it doesn't look like we have any other sidewalks in this vicinity.
Right, that is a good point, Blake.
Any additional comments from the board? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote on that, Brandy.
Dolly?
Yes?
Kays?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Spire?
Yes.
Aletsky?
Yes.
Brink?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Motion passes. Conditional use is approved. We'll move on to item 4D on the agenda, which is another conditional use request.
Yes, thank you, Blake. This is board consideration of a conditional use request in the A1 and R4. So A1 is the agricultural and R4 is the manufactured homes district on property generally located south of 12th Avenue Southwest on Block 2, Stromseth 3rd Edition, and in the northwest quarter of Section 116 North, Range 53 West. And the owner is Reagan Roll, and the applicant seeks approval for a campground to be located in the R4 Manufactured Home District and the A1 Agricultural District, contingent upon the compliance of 210202. And the owner is seeking a conditional, wow, this repeats. The ordinance allows for campgrounds in both zoning districts as a conditional use. And so so right now there's a split zoning, so it's zoned the agricultural and R4. And if this conditional use passes, we will work with him on getting that cleaned up where he will rezone into one district and then he will plat. And this is over by Pelican in this, maybe not yet. In this area. So the site plan that he provided, it fits in this kind of mode area where the wetlands are not. And it will be, the access will come off of 12th Avenue. And I believe that utilities are already in place that, and Bert with utilities had mentioned that it's been in for quite a while, that it was set up for a mobile home park in the past. And then now he's asking to do a campground instead. And go with it that way. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Brandy. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. While we're waiting for anybody that might want to speak, Brandy, it looks like there's some existing right-of-way dedication there for a road that hasn't been built at this point. How does that fit into the overall plan?
We will work with the applicant on either we can vacate it because he's going to build over it, and then because it's not improved and it's under one ownership, it can be vacated by a function of a plat. So that will all be cleaned up. But after finding out if this conditional use is, if it's approved, then we'll work with him on getting the property cleaned up.
And he owns the property then on all three sides there abutting that right away?
Yes.
Brandy, so is this to be a paved interior road?
Initially, we were planning on, I'm sorry, my name is Regan Roll. We were planning on stripping black dirt and putting a good measure of crushed concrete in initially and seeking good compaction, and then we'll be doing a chip coat likely over the top. We're still in the formative stages as to that, but a lot of that has to do with Austin Engineering's recommendation as to how to build the road, so.
Randy, is this be a private road that I'm understanding?
Yes.
Do we have design standards in our design standard manual for private roads?
No, we have in the chapter 2176 for campgrounds, we have design standards here. So the access to public roads and highways shall be paved or surfaced in a similar material to the adjacent public roads and shall be approved by the city.
So, and who is the one that approves the road materials? Is that staff? Is that council, or how does that go about?
That'll be Heath, the city engineer.
Okay, second question, will there be screening on the north side abutting the manufactured homes?
No, it's not our intention.
What about lighting? I can't tell from this, is there a lighting plan with this area where you'll be having overhead lighting?
Now, our intention is to make this our parks are done well, and this is not going to be done on the cheap. There's going to have to be lamp posts. It's all going to be under one owner utilities for water, sewer, electrical. So we'll be in charge of paying the bills, so to speak, and we want it to be safe and it to be very attractive. So I don't know exactly the design of the lamp posts, but we've done these before in other RV parks, or other mobile home parks rather, where we have private drives, like down in Brookings, and Austin Engineering, again, with the amount of light foot candles that'll be needed, will guide us in that direction.
Brandy, is that dedicated or dictated by Watertown Municipal Utilities on spacing of those on private roads, or how does that work?
It's a private road, he can do what he wants.
Bert with utilities is here, and he says that no, it is a private road and he can do as he wants.
Okay. What about where will these campers and the people that they're staying in them, where will they go in the event of inclement weather? Is there any plan, when you say a campground, is there any plan for bathing house or a storm shelter?
We hadn't planned on it. We had to
Or
do
recreation facilities, playgrounds, those types of things?
No, we're really focused on more of a overnight stays or construction workers for long periods of time. Is the kind of the primary market that we see is available.
But you're not looking at doing anything for storm shelter or safety for those workers?
No, I had to do one in Thief River Falls through the state of Minnesota one time, 25 years ago, and they didn't tell us how big to build it or the design standards. And eventually I just put a culvert above ground, a square culvert above ground with caps on each end. But even today, they don't have design standards and they don't have square footage requirements. So it's really, it's just a difficult thing to size, because as soon as we build one, it won't be big enough, it won't be accessible, kids will get into it and make a mess, and it just becomes so problematic. Now, if it's required, we'll certainly entertain it, but we're not going to just do it, because I've worked through this before, and it ends up opening up so many other issues that people a lot of times don't think about, is what design standards, wind loads, who has the master key, are they available, all of those things that come about. And it's, again, if it's required, we'll certainly entertain it, but
what are your plans for campground supervision of this area?
We have a full-time manager that works for us and has for years. We run a tight ship. We adhere very strictly to the crime-free zone, and I think your police department would probably attest to the fact that the fewest calls, I'm hedging here because I don't know that for certain, but I know by the number of calls and the good rapport we have with the police, we're not going to let a bunch of anything happen here that isn't reflecting us personally.
I'm not city management that's managing the mobile home.
Yeah,
I'm not inferring.
it's in Country View, just about 4 blocks away. The manager lives in the park.
Okay, that was my follow-up question. I wasn't inferring that you were going to be letting in all kinds of flotsam and jetsam into the area. It's just more of just a standard question, sir.
Sure.
Are you going to have this open during the winter months too, or just shut it down in the fall?
Yeah, it's at this point, it's really problematic to expect that we would do that. We would, but so no. I guess you'd never say never, but we've had, my brother has a RV park in Omaha, and it's just so difficult to skirt them, and it just costs so much money that I just don't see it happening other than the construction season.
Or even people that go south for the winter and come back.
Yeah, that's we're gonna,
Right.
this will look nice. I mean, this is gonna be an addition that you will be proud of.
Randy, one other question is, are there drainage requirements that would have to be also addressed with this development?
Most likely, no. They will not be exceeding the impervious. Well, we'll look at his plan, but I don't foresee that he'll be exceeding the 1 acre impervious to require detention. So, but we will review that.
Well, by and large, it's basically a subdivision development with up to 15 units. And so there's no stormwater retention requirements for a development like this?
If it were exceeding the 1 acre impervious, like the last campground that we have been working with just north of Kempeska, that one does have detention requirements because of how much impervious, but it's a larger area. How much impervious is being created.
If you got the roads themselves would be an acre.
Well, yeah, so we will review the drainage requirements.
All right, thank you.
No variance is being requested in relation to that. This is strictly conditional use, and it would be expected to meet the requirements.
Right. Yeah, and you know, with him owning the entire area, he probably would have room. And then, you know, these are potentially jurisdictional wetlands, but all those things we would look at more deeply once we found out if the ground suited was appropriate for a campground.
Is there going to be any restriction in relation to the lots that extend into the 100-year flood boundary?
Yes, they have to be moved every 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any anchoring requirements for campers in a floodplain, Brandy?
I do not believe so if they are moved more than 6 months. Or not there for over 6 months.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Mayor Sarah Karen. I just wanted to share my screen here and just to point out there are private streets in this neighborhood. 12th Avenue, which is paved with curb and gutter, and 19th Street. Those are both private streets. And actually, at some point, we knew about that potential for a road there because we're showing it as a private street. I don't think it exists, but this is just an excerpt from our private street map that we have. And I didn't even know if Brandy knew we had this map, but just because it shows on there as a street doesn't necessarily mean that that's a public street. So 12th Avenue is actually a private street, and that's the one that's along here. This is a private street, and then they'd be extending another private street. That's all. I just wanted to point that out.
Yep, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is there anybody else to speak in the public while we have the public hearing open?
Yeah, I would like to.
Yes, go ahead.
I think my question is this intended with construction type?
One moment. Could I have you state your name for the record, please?
Yeah, sure. You bet. Troy Reinhardt.
Thank you.
Is this intended to be a kind of a seasonal, to draw construction workers in for the whole season? Or is it going to be more just temporary, overnight, weekend type campground?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the intention is not to have a revolving door. We seek to have simplicity, and so we're actually going to have a minimum stay requirement so that we don't have people just coming in out from a KOA campground situation. So because we want minimal and long-term stays, we want simplicity. And we can enforce that by saying you have to be here for at least 2 weeks, and we haven't determined what the optimal point is on that. But we don't want an overnight situation. It just creates too much traffic, too much chaos, and just frankly, just too much work. This all started just for because this was designed to be a mobile home park, and the infrastructure is put in, but after we purchased it, the lines were changed as to the 100-year flood, and so we basically have invested the infrastructure, but then the lines were changed, and it just happens. But because we can't build something permanent on it, I was visiting with a couple of the other park owners, one of them who has a RV park, and he said he turns down 10 calls a week minimum because he's completely full. And he said it's going to be more years of more construction is what his opinion. And I said, well, I sought out Brandy for advice and to see would it be possible to do an RV park here, because we have management, we have the infrastructure, and if it serves a need, even if it's a relatively temporary need, which I don't think it will. I think because it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful area, and it's quiet, and it'll stay that way. So it was trying to turn lemonade out of lemons, because we're paying taxes on it. We have the infrastructure, but we can't do anything with it, and this would serve that purpose.
Yeah, and I totally understand the vision of it. I think my only concern, just to voice it for record, is just Western North Dakota. I've been out there for business, and I've seen what some of those seasonal RV parks look like, and they can get rough at times if they're not maintained well. So if there's on-site management, that obviously helps, but just for the record, just know from experience what they can turn into.
Well, if you have a moment, pull up Country View in Mallard Cove Mobile Home Park and click on the website and do the virtual tour of our parks. I think you'll understand quickly that we don't put up with anything that's going to be disrespectful to our neighborhood or the value of our property. So we are not going to make this in anything other than something to be proud of.
Okay.
That's true. All we have to do is look at the surrounding homes where it's going to go in.
And he does have a pretty cool virtual tour on that website too. And I think you have a rendition of what this park would be. Is that
a rendition of what?
Of what this campground could look like?
Yep. And again, Rod was out this afternoon. He left a little early. I know he's got some of the drawings done. I was hoping to bring them today, but I guess I didn't want to spend an inordinate amount of money with Rod until I knew that we were able to move forward with this. But he has done some conceptuals, and he was identifying the utilities because they did originally the design work. And that's the beginning of it. Those lots will basically be cut in half, and we'll be splitting water and sewer off on each side, because right now they're about 107 feet. They'll be down to 50 feet, which is more conducive with a camper with a parking pad next to it for a vehicle.
Mr. Chair, question for the applicant.
Yes, sir.
What are you thinking about, what will be the maximum density of campers in the park?
Hopefully we'll be able to, and again, this comes back to Austin Engineering's design, what fits within, what's tasteful, what makes sense. But we're estimating around 30 units at max, but it might be 35. I haven't seen his final. Some of the shapes of the lots don't really allow for 2 into 1. It may be 3 into 2. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there, but they're going to be more than the lots that are present. They'll be effectively double, is what we're hoping for.
According to the ordinance 2, each campsite shall contain at least 2,000 square feet. So that will limit how many he can get in there as well.
Madam Mayor, did you have another comment? I do see that you have your hand raised on Teams.
No, sorry. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't notice that previously. Any additional voices from the public while we have the public hearing open? All right. Thank you, sir. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, this is Kays. I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, Mr. Case?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the request for a campground with the one caveat that while they do own both properties right now, and the manufactured home court to the north is done in immaculate condition. The existing double wide that's going to be immediately abutting lot 1 that's in the drawing. I'm going to guess those people would want to have some sort of separation or a screening from the proposed commercial type uses, which this is basically is. And more often than not, in most of our regulations, when we have commercial uses that abut residential uses, we do require some sort of screening. And so whether that would be a fence or a tree planting, I would leave that up to the applicant. But my motion is to approve subject to a screen plan on that one lot north of lot 1.
The applicant has a comment. If Blake, do you mind if he speaks?
Yeah, that's fine.
We've built a couple of nice long fences. I personally have built them in spots where, frankly, we were shielding them from scrap yards on the north and places that just, the neighbors were not very clean. They just had junk piled everywhere. So we've built those in the past. I see exactly the same what you're seeing, and when we get down to it, I don't think there's any problem with that because we want these homeowners to be happy. And so I don't see that not only a problem, I think it would probably be something we would end up doing regardless, because we want this to be, these people have invested a lot of money and they've been there for years. The last thing we want to do is put them next to something that they think is not right. So we will likely do something, but I would guess it will be a fence. And they're not cheap, but it's the only solution. That planting trees, although we're going to plant another 130 trees next spring with the help of the city. We plant trees all the time. I did 48 this year, but I think in this case, it's probably going to have to be a fence, and I agree with you.
Yeah, thank you. And the only reason I'm making I knowing that you guys would do a good job, but just to be consistent, the next guy might not be as well intended, and so that's why the request is being made. So that's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Thank you, Mr. Rolls. Motion on the table with that condition. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
A second by Oletsky. Any additional discussion before we take a vote? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Okay, Spire,
Yes.
Kays,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
and Ford.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, with that conditional use request is approved, and we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda. So open public comments. Is there anybody to speak to the board on something that wasn't on the agenda today? Anybody in the room there or anybody on Teams?
It doesn't appear that there's anybody in the room to speak on it.
Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Is there any new business for the Board of Adjustment?
Nope.
Any old business?
Nope.
With that, I will go ahead and adjourn, and we will resume as the plan